Alright, lean in close. Wherever you're joining me from, maybe you're caught in the morning rush or finding a quiet moment in your day, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because you're about to be plunged into a different kind of rush. We're traveling back deep into the heart of Victorian London, specifically the sweltering summer of 1854. The air here hangs heavy, thick with the smell of coal smoke, damp earth, and something else, something you can't quite place, but it prickles the back of your throat, a persistent, unsettling itch. You're standing by the great murky sweep of the Thames. It's not the picturesque river you might imagine. This is the city's sewer, its lifeline, its dumping ground, all rolled into one foul-smelling ribbon. A sudden sharp thirst grips you, that dry, desperate kind that makes your tongue feel like sandpaper. You glance around. Others are doing the same. A street vendor, his face etched with the grime of the city, dips a stained bucket into the sluggish, oily current. He offers you a ladle, its surface dull and worn. Your stomach clenches, a knot of apprehension forming, but the thirst is overwhelming. You watch the dark, silty water slosh, catching the dull light, flecked with unidentifiable debris. You see him nod, a weary gesture that seems to say, "It's all there is, mate." You raise the ladle. The surface shimmers a dull, almost oily sheen. The smell rising from it is a complex cocktail. Stale fish, industrial waste, and a curious, sickly sweet undertone that feels utterly wrong, a cloying promise of decay. Hesitantly, you bring it to your lips. The first contact is not cool or refreshing, but tepid, almost warm, carrying an immediate, disturbing chemical tang. Then the full force of the taste hits you. It's not merely unpleasant, it's a profound revelation of the city's foulness. A strong, metallic tang, like rusted iron on your tongue, mixes with a gritty, earthy flavor. Beneath that, a subtle, sweet decay, a cloying richness that coats your mouth, leaving a sensation that makes your jaw ache. Your teeth feel faintly fuzzy. You swallow, or try to, and your throat tightens, a shiver running down your spine, not from cold but from a deep internal alarm. It feels like drinking the very essence of the city's forgotten corners, its refuse, its slow, inexorable decay, all compressed into this single grim mouthful. You try to push past it, to tell yourself it's just bad water, but the metallic sweetness lingers, a bitter, unforgettable promise on your palate. You watch others, their faces contorted in grimaces as they drink, some wiping their mouths with the back of a calloused hand, a few coughing, their shoulders hunched in quiet resignation. A young mother nearby, her eyes hollow with fatigue and worry, gently coaxes her pale child to drink from a similar source, her gaze darting to yours, a shared understanding of profound desperation passing between you. No words are exchanged, but the unspoken message is clear. This is the harsh price of living in this teeming, sprawling metropolis. You feel the faint gurgle in your stomach, a warning perhaps, or merely your body's visceral protest against the chemical concoction you've just ingested. The immense weight of the city presses in, the chilling knowledge that this very river, this tainted lifeline, provides the daily hydration for millions. What kind of sustenance is this, when every sip carries such a heavy, unseen burden? It's a strange thing, isn't it, to desire something so utterly vital, water, only for it to become a source of insidious fear, a silent, treacherous betrayer. You realize with a sudden, stark clarity how easily the most fundamental human need can transform into a perilous conduit, twisting the very act of survival into a daily, gut-wrenching gamble. That unsettling taste of the Thames still lingers, a grim reminder on your tongue, but now a different sensation presses in. A heavy, cloying dampness hangs in the air, not quite rain, but a thick, oppressive moisture that clings to your lungs with every breath. You pull your collar higher instinctively, as if a thin layer of wool could offer protection against the very air you breathe. It's an evening, and the gas lamps are just beginning to splutter into life, casting pools of sickly yellow light that struggle to pierce the pervasive murk. This isn't just common fog, this is the London pea super, a thick sulphurous blanket that coats everything. As you walk, the dampness settles on your eyelashes, making the world appear blurred, distorted. You can taste the fog itself, a gritty chemical tang that feels like an extension of the coal smoke, yet laced with something far more sinister. There's an undeniable scent of decay, a sickly sweet odor that clings to your clothing, a stench that suggests something organic, putrefying, mingling with the acrid bite of industry. It's the air of a city slowly suffocating, exhaling its own filth. You navigate the narrow, cobbled streets with caution, your boots echoing dully off unseen walls. The usually vibrant hubbub of the city is muffled, distorted by the dense atmosphere. You hear the coughs before you see the people hacking guttural sounds that rip through the oppressive silence, followed by the hurried scuff of footsteps fading into the gloom. A woman, her face a pale blur in the dim light, clutches a handkerchief to her mouth, her eyes wide with an unspoken fear as she brushes past you, her shawl damp and heavy. She glances over her shoulder, a nervous, fleeting look that conveys a shared understanding of the invisible threat. Everyone moves with a strange, nervous energy, a desperate haste to be somewhere else, anywhere else, away from this pervasive, silent menace. You pass an open window, and the scent of disinfectants, cheap carbolic acid, assaults your nostrils, a futile attempt to combat the overwhelming foulness that creeps in from outside. It's a battle lost before it's even begun. You see a figure, a stout gentleman standing on a street corner, his hand outstretched, palm upwards, as if trying to grasp at the very essence of the air, to understand its elusive, dangerous quality. His brow is furrowed, a profound worry etched into his features, his gaze fixed on nothing, or perhaps everything, the swirling, unseen particles that now define existence in this grand, ailing city. The air itself feels heavy with unspoken dread. There's a profound, chilling difference between seeing a threat and feeling it seep into your very bones, an invisible enemy inhaled with every breath. You realize, with a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold, how vulnerable we are to the things we cannot perceive, the silent contagions that ride on the wind, blurring the line between the city's atmospheric embrace and its slow, suffocating poison. It's a cruel irony that the very breath that sustains us can become the conduit for our deepest fears. The quiet of the late evening, a brief lull in the city's relentless thrum, is suddenly violently shattered. From somewhere down the cobbled lane, an unholy clatter erupts, a watchman's rattle, sharp and insistent, tearing through the suffocating stillness. It's not the usual hurried clack of a distant patrol. This is an urgent, frantic burst, a sound that snaps your head up, sends a jolt through your chest. Your hands clench without conscious thought. That particular sound in this stifling summer carries a new, unsettling weight. You're standing by your window, drawn by a sudden chill despite the oppressive heat. The gas lamp across the street flickers, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to stretch and distort with the sound. The rattle echoes, closer now then further, as if whoever wields it is moving erratically, desperately. You lean forward, pressing against the cool pane, trying to pierce the gloom, to understand the frantic message it screams into the humid air. It's a sound of alarm, yes, but more than that, it feels like a raw cry of distress, raw fear. The noise makes others stir. You see the faint glow of a candle spring to life in an opposite window, then another quickly snuffed out, as if whoever lit it regrets drawing attention. A shadow detaches itself from the deeper darkness of an alleyway, moving with an unnatural haste, almost a scuttle, before disappearing around a corner. The rattle continues, a frantic, almost desperate rhythm, punctuated by hurried footsteps that seem to stumble, then rush onward. It's a broken sound, a frantic plea. You catch a glimpse just for a moment of a figure in the dim light. It's a watchman, his uniform dark against the even darker street, but his face is a pale blur, his mouth agape, though you hear no words. He's not simply alerting, he's a messenger of ill tidings, his whole body taut with an urgent, almost desperate energy. He shakes the rattle with a wild, uncontrollable force, as if trying to physically beat back the invisible threat. The sound fades slowly into the labyrinthine streets, leaving behind a silence far more unsettling than the noise itself. A chilling quiet descends, heavy with unspoken dread. The brief peace is well and truly broken. You feel a prickle on your skin, the hairs on your arms standing on end, and it's not from the damp night air. This wasn't merely a disturbance. It was a tremor, a first stark warning, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of escalating crisis. You understand now that the rattle isn't just announcing danger. It's confirming that something has fundamentally shifted, that a new, terrifying chapter has begun for the city, and perhaps for you. It's a profound realization of how fragile the veneer of ordinary life can be, shattered in an instant by a sound in the night. You wake with a jolt, not to the distant sound of the city, but to a searing pain coiling in your gut. It's a sudden, violent twist, a knot tightening with a ferocious, unrelenting grip. Your breath catches, sharp and ragged, as you double over, the world spinning in a sudden, sickening lurch. A wave of intense nausea washes over you, so potent it steals the air from your lungs, forcing a gasp that turns into a desperate retch. There's no time to reach for a basin, no grace in this brutal awakening. Your body convulses, an urgent, uncontrolled expulsion that leaves you weak, trembling, and slick with cold sweat despite the oppressive humidity of the room. A metallic tang fills your mouth, bitter and acrid, clinging to your tongue. You try to push yourself upright, but your limbs feel like lead, heavy and unresponsive, a strange, profound weakness seeping into your very bones. You glance at your hands, they look pale, almost translucent in the dim, pre-dawn light filtering through the grimy window. A faint blueness seems to tint your fingernails, a creeping, unnatural hue that sends a fresh wave of panic through your chest. The pain in your abdomen returns, sharper this time, a cruel, relentless churning that threatens to tear you apart from the inside. Your muscles clench, not under your command, but in a frantic, desperate spasm. You feel a strange chill deep within you, an icy tremor that shivers through your core even as your skin feels clammy and damp. Your head pounds with a dull, insistent ache, and your vision blurs around the edges, the familiar shapes of your room wavering, losing their sharp definition. You manage to push yourself to the edge of the bed, the effort monumental, each movement a struggle against a force you don't understand. Your breath comes in shallow, gasping bursts, your throat raw and dry. There's a profound sense of wrongness, of your body betraying you, turning against itself with a terrible, silent fury. You catch a fleeting glimpse of your reflection in a tiny, tarnished mirror, and what you see is a stranger, hollow-eyed, lips faintly blue, skin stretched tight over sharpened cheekbones. The chilling reality begins to set in, a terrifying understanding. This isn't a mere stomach upset, not a passing fever. This is something far more insidious, a rapid, merciless assault on the very core of your being. You realize with a horrifying clarity that the water you drank, the air you breathed, the very city that surrounds you, has somehow seeped inside, transforming your own body into a battleground. It's a stark, visceral understanding of how utterly helpless one can become, as the familiar vessel of self begins its rapid, alarming descent into an alien, terrifying territory. The air is thick, not just with the familiar London smog, but with a new, potent stench that makes your stomach lurch. It's a cloying, sickly sweet odor, undeniably organic, a powerful blend of decay and something sharper, a chemical-like tang that burns the back of your throat. This isn't the usual urban reek, this is the smell of fear made manifest, clinging to the damp stones and seeping from the overflowing gutters. You can almost taste it, a bitter, metallic coating on your tongue that defies all attempts to swallow it away. You step carefully along the narrow pavement, your gaze involuntarily drawn downwards. The gutters, usually running with a grimy but flowing mix of rainwater and refuse, are now choked. Here a discarded bucket overturned, its contents a pale, watery discharge pooling sluggishly. There a stained cloth, its fabric stiff with dried sickness. The sheer volume of waste is overwhelming, a horrifying testament to the rapid, widespread illness gripping the city. It doesn't just sit there, it appears to actively breed the miasma you're forced to breathe, a visual and olfactory assault. The usual cacophony of street life is muted, hushed by a pervasive sense of dread. People move with a noticeable urgency, their eyes fixed ahead, avoiding any direct contact, any lingering glance. Their shoulders are hunched, their faces pale and drawn, as if caught in a perpetual half-sprint. You notice a young man, perhaps a porter, stumble near a particularly foul patch, his face contorting in a grimace of revulsion before he steadies himself and hurries on, almost running from the stench that seems to cling to him. There's a palpable tension, a fragile desperation in every hurried step, every averted gaze. You watch as a small dog, usually a lively blur in these streets, sniffs at a puddle, then backs away with a whimper, its tail tucked low, as if even instinct tells it to shy from this particular kind of filth. The pervasive smell, the silent, hasty movements of passers-by, the sheer visual evidence of sickness in the very arteries of the street, it all paints a grim picture. It's as if the very fabric of daily life, the rough-and-tumble resilience of London, is fraying, thread by thread, dissolving into the pervasive filth. You realize that the chaos isn't just in the homes, in the sickness itself, but here on the street. The order is breaking down, replaced by a desperate, silent retreat. The air is no longer just air. It's a palpable carrier of fear and sickness, and you find yourself holding your breath for longer than is natural, a futile attempt to keep the insidious city at bay. What does it mean for a city when its very foundations, its streets, its shared spaces, become saturated with the evidence of a silent, relentless enemy? You step onto the cobblestones and the usual roar of London is gone, replaced by a silence so profound it's chilling, so vast it seems to swallow the very light. Your own boots, usually lost in the relentless din of Hackney, now clatter with an almost disrespectful loudness, each step echoing unnaturally down the deserted street. It feels wrong, deeply wrong, to hear nothing but the faint creak of a distant sign swaying in a non-existent breeze. The very air seems to hold its breath, a heavy, expectant quiet that prickles your skin. The market stalls, usually a vibrant riot of colour, scent and shouts, stand deserted now, their canvas covers flapping weakly like forgotten flags. A dropped apple, half-rotted, lies forgotten in the mud, a stark testament to a sudden, desperate departure. Every window is shuttered tight, every door tightly closed, their paint peeling like old skin, giving the terraced houses a hollow, sightless appearance. You feel a strange sense of being watched, even though no one is there, as if the houses themselves are eyes observing your lonely trek, their silent judgment palpable. A mangy stray dog, usually bold and scavenging, darts from an alleyway, its ribs stark against its matted fur, before quickly vanishing into another shadow, as if fearing even the sound of its own desperate movements. The bakery, normally pumping out the warm, comforting scent of fresh bread, is cold, its iron grates pulled down. The pub, a hub of hearty laughter and argument, stands dark, its windows reflecting the grey, muted sky like vacant eyes. This isn't the quiet of rest, it's the oppressive stillness of abandonment, of fear having cleared the streets more effectively than any watchman. The silence isn't peaceful, it's heavy, charged with a palpable tension, a quiet scream trapped beneath the surface of this unnaturally still neighbourhood. You pass an overturned handcart, its contents, a scatter of vegetables and a broken crate strewn across the cobbles, untouched, uncollected. No one dares to stoop to salvage, to even acknowledge the mundane debris of a life interrupted. It's as if the common transactions of existence, the very fabric of community, have simply ceased. The weight of this emptiness is immense, a stark contrast to the city's usual overflowing vitality. You realize that this emptiness isn't just about absence, it's about the overwhelming presence of an invisible dread, forcing life to shrink, to hide, to simply cease. What remains is a chilling monument to fear, a stark reminder of how quickly the vibrant pulse of a city can falter, leaving behind only the ghost of its former self, holding its breath in collective terror. You step into the cramped room and the air hits you like a physical blow. It's thick, stagnant and oppressively warm, heavy with a cloying, sickly sweet odor that catches in your throat, a potent blend of illness, sweat and cheap disinfectant that seems to cling to the very fabric of the walls. It makes your stomach clench, a quick, involuntary spasm of revulsion, but it's the sounds that truly pierce you. From the dim corners, a low, guttural groan rises, then falls, swallowed by another, sharper gasp from a different part of the room. It's a discordant symphony of suffering, a relentless chorus that weaves through the humid air. You hear the shallow, rattling intake of breath, the wet, desperate cough that leaves the throat raw, the soft, almost imperceptible whimpering of a child. Each sound is a painful, visceral echo of the city's unseen struggle, amplified and trapped within these four walls. The rhythmic scrape of a bucket being moved across the uneven floor feels jarringly loud, yet quickly absorbed into the overarching lament. Your eyes, adjusting to the gloom filtering through grimy, shuttered windows, make out shapes. Forms lie huddled under thin, stained blankets on makeshift beds, some on straw pallets directly on the floor. A face, unnaturally pale and drawn, lips cracked and peeling, is visible for a moment as it twists in a silent, desperate effort to find comfort. You see the subtle, rhythmic tremor of a limb, the rigid clenching of fingers against a threadbare sheet. The room is a tableau of relentless, intimate agony. A woman, her face etched with profound exhaustion, moves with a weary, almost ghostly deliberation between the afflicted. Her movements are slow, precise, a silent ritual of care. You watch her press a damp, cool cloth to a fevered forehead, her touch gentle, almost reverent, her eyes heavy with unshed tears. She pauses by a small wooden pail, its contents undoubtedly foul, and carefully lifts it, carrying it away with a stoic, resigned expression, the brief splash too loud in the oppressive stillness of the room. She doesn't speak, her silence a profound statement of futility and overwhelming grief. Your own breath feels shallow and tight, each inhale a conscious effort against the weight of the contaminated air. A lightheadedness creeps in, a sense of disassociation from the raw, exposed suffering around you. You want to retreat, to gulp down clean, fresh air, but a terrible fascination, a grim sense of duty, holds you captive in this suffocating space. You realize with a chilling clarity that this isn't merely illness, it's a profound violation. This small room meant for rest and private life has become a public theater of ultimate vulnerability, where the human body is reduced to a vessel of pain, its most intimate torments laid bare in an unrelenting, heartbreaking chorus. It starts as a faint rumble, a low, grinding sound from somewhere far down the street. At first, you might mistake it for a delivery dray or the usual nocturnal movements of the city. But then a distinct, rhythmic clatter begins to assert itself, growing steadily louder on the uneven cobblestones. It's a sound that drills into your very bones, unique and chilling. A heavy wooden cart, its wheels complaining with every rotation, dragging slowly, inexorably closer. This isn't the hurried rattle of a watchman's alarm. This is a relentless, dull rhythm, a solemn, mechanical beat that announces an arrival and a departure with a terrible finality. You're standing by a grimy window, drawn there by an instinctual dread, your breath held in anticipation. The faint gaslight from the street below shimmers, making the glass feel cold beneath your fingertips. The sound intensifies, now accompanied by the slow, heavy clip-clop of a horse's hooves, each impact resonating with an unnerving weight. There's no urgency in this progression, only a grim, methodical certainty. A single small bell, muted and mournful, occasionally rings with a dull, hollow note, a stark counterpoint to the relentless clatter. It's the sound of the city's grim, new routine. As the cart finally creaks into view beneath the flickering gas lamp, a profound hush descends upon the street, an almost reverent silence from the few souls who linger in the shadows. Its silhouette is stark, a dark, heavy mass against the pre-dawn gloom. You see the rough wooden planks of the bed, heaped with forms wrapped in crude blankets or sheets, indistinguishable bundles that represent lives extinguished. The air around the cart seems colder, heavier, carrying with it a faint metallic scent that hints at sickness, at bodily fluids, at the final, irreversible surrender. The figures guiding the horse are broad, anonymous men, their faces obscured by the dim light and the grime of their grim work. They move with a practiced, weary efficiency, their heads bowed, their silence profound. They don't look up, don't acknowledge the few huddled onlookers. Their focus is solely on the path ahead, their mission clear and unavoidable. You watch a woman, clutching a shawl tightly around her, duck back into a doorway as the cart draws level, her eyes wide with a terror that is both personal and universal. Another man, older, simply stands, hands clasped, his gaze following the cart with a deep, sorrowful resignation, a silent tear tracing a path through the dirt on his cheek. The cart passes directly beneath your window now, its presence dominating the street, its creaks and groans filling the otherwise suffocating silence. You can almost feel the vibrations of its wheels through the very building. And then, as slowly as it arrived, it begins to recede, the clatter diminishing, the mournful bell fading into the distance, until only the oppressive silence remains, heavier than before. The rhythmic advance and retreat of this dreadful cart, you realize, has become the new heartbeat of the city, a chilling, undeniable pulse that marks the relentless march of the disease, a constant, harrowing reminder that life here in these troubled times is now measured not just in days, but in the dreadful sound of what comes to take away the dead. A hand surprisingly cold and slick with sweat grips yours. The touch is fleeting, yet remarkably firm, startling in its clamminess amidst the humid, cloying air of the small makeshift surgery. You'd been waiting, standing amongst a silent, desperate queue, the faint scent of carbolic acid and something else, herbs perhaps, or desperation, stinging your nostrils. This is the healer, his face etched with a profound weariness that speaks of too many long nights, too many lost battles. His eyes, though, hold a sharp, almost feverish intensity, a spark of conviction that draws you in despite your lingering doubts. He doesn't speak, but his gaze, direct and unwavering, seems to bore into you, assessing, measuring. You feel the faint tremor in his fingers as they briefly press against your palm, a subtle vibration that conveys both exhaustion and an underlying, restless energy. He nods slowly, a gesture that seems to confirm a grim understanding. You watch as he turns, his movements quick but precise, towards a small stained wooden table laden with an assortment of vials and dried botanicals. The air hums with a quiet tension, a collective breath held by those who stand with you, all silently clinging to the fragile hope he embodies. He mixes something with a pestle and mortar, the soft, grinding sound a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant, muffled groans from elsewhere in the building. You observe the delicate precision of his hands, scarred and calloused, yet moving with a surgeon's certainty as he selects a dark, viscous liquid from a small, stoppered bottle. There's no grand pronouncement, no dramatic flourish. Just a quiet, concentrated effort, a single man battling an unseen enemy with whatever meager weapons he possesses. You see the faint glint of sweat on his brow, the slight tightening of his jaw, a momentary flicker of profound determination that seems to defy the bleak reality outside these walls. He presents you with a small, unlabeled vial, its contents a murky, yellowish tint. He doesn't offer explanations, only a slow, deliberate tilt of his head, a silent instruction that carries the weight of a desperate gamble. His eyes meet yours again, and in that brief connection, you see not just the burden of his impossible task, but a quiet, fervent plea for belief. He's offering not just a remedy, but a sliver of hope, a desperate wager against the overwhelming odds. You take the vial, its glass cool and smooth against your clammy fingers. It feels like a small, fragile promise held in your hand, a gamble against a disease that seems to mock all understanding. You realize with a heavy heart that healing in these times isn't about grand cures, but about desperate acts of faith, whispered prayers, and the unwavering, almost defiant, will of a few to push back against the tide of despair, even when their own hands tremble with the cold touch of what they fight. You stand by the bedside, the air thick with the smell of camphor and something vaguely herbal, a desperate concoction of hope and fear. Your gaze falls upon the small, damp poultice of mustard and flour plastered clumsily to the patient's chest, its edges already peeling, providing no visible comfort. It feels heavy, inert, a warm, useless weight against skin that is clammy and cold. The faint, persistent cough of the afflicted seems to mock the efforts, each shallow gasp a testament to the remedy's impotence, a harsh, rattling sound that tears at the quiet. A grizzled old woman, her face a roadmap of worry lines, carefully measures out a pinch of white powder onto a spoon. Her hands, gnarled and trembling slightly, move with a ritualistic reverence, as if the sheer act of preparation holds more power than the substance itself. You watch as she gently tries to coax the patient to swallow the bitter dose. The patient, their eyes sunken and dull, manages a weak gulp, a faint grimace twisting their blue-tinged lips before their head lolls back unresponsive. The powder, a mixture of chalk and opium, offers only a fleeting false peace, a moment of dullness before the inevitable return of the body's cruel betrayal. You feel a tremor of cold dread run through you as you observe this desperate, futile effort. The silence in the room, punctuated only by the patient's labored breathing and the occasional distant wail from the street, feels charged with a profound futility. You see a small, worn prayer book resting on the bedside table, its pages thumbed thin and soft from countless readings. A young man, perhaps a son or brother, kneels awkwardly by the bed, his head bowed, his lips moving in a silent, desperate entreaty. His hands are clasped so tightly his knuckles are white, his hope a raw, exposed thing. It's a prayer, not for a cure perhaps, but for relief, for an end, for mercy. His shoulders shake, not with the patient's tremors, but with a silent, overwhelming grief that has already begun its work. You cast your eyes over the various small bottles, the dried herbs, the half-empty phials of concoctions lining the mantelpiece, remedies bought with hard-earned pennies, each promising a miracle, each delivering nothing but continued suffering or a swift, terrible end. The collective weight of these useless cures, these desperate gambits against an invisible foe, settles upon you, a heavy, suffocating blanket. The potent smell of the remedies, once a symbol of active resistance, now just underscores the overwhelming helplessness, a final, cruel irony. It's a chilling realization. The very acts intended to save, these earnest, heartfelt attempts, are nothing more than whispers against a hurricane. You understand with a pang of dread that in the face of such overwhelming, unknown devastation, humanity grasps at anything, any ritual, any substance, any prayer, simply to feel a fleeting sense of control, a desperate illusion of agency against a force that cares nothing for hope or effort. And yet still, you find yourself wanting to believe in the next poultice, the next powder, the next whispered prayer, if only to defy the crushing reality. You step out and the air itself feels stretched thin, vibrating with an almost unbearable tension. But it's the smell that grabs you first, a sharp, cloying wave of carbolic acid. It's everywhere, clinging to your clothes, biting at the back of your throat, a desperate attempt to mask the underlying stench of sickness and fear that still manages to seep through. This isn't a scent of cleanliness. It's the pungent perfume of desperation, an olfactory alarm bell ringing through the overcrowded streets. Your eyes water slightly and you pull your collar higher, a futile gesture against an invisible, pervasive enemy. The chaos isn't just in the sick rooms anymore, it's spilled out onto the very cobblestones. People aren't just hurrying, they're scurrying, a frantic, almost animalistic energy propelling them through the narrow lanes. You see a man clutching a handkerchief to his nose, not to ward off a common stink, but to filter the very air. His eyes dart around, wide and unfocused, constantly searching for a threat that can't be seen. He bumps into another, a woman carrying a small bundle, and neither offers an apology, only a quick, fearful glance before resuming their desperate flight. It's a city unraveling, its polite veneers stripped away by a primal, overwhelming terror. From a doorway, a mother pulls her child back sharply, almost yanking him from the street, her face contorted in a silent plea to avoid some unseen contamination. Her gaze lingers on a puddle near the curb, a potent mix of rain and something else, a palpable disgust and dread in her eyes. Everyone seems to be moving with a heightened, almost frantic awareness, their movements jerky, their conversations hushed to urgent, hurried whispers that seem to convey more panic than information. The rhythm of the city, once a steady hum, is now a jangled, discordant beat of frayed nerves and escalating alarm. You pass a small group gathered around a public pump, not for water, but for advice, for solace, for anything. Their faces are a tableau of anxiety, pale, drawn, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights. You hear the clipped, urgent tones of a gentleman, his hands gesticulating wildly, his voice just a low murmur, but the desperation in his stance is clear. He looks almost frantic, like a man drowning, grasping at any straw. Others listen, nodding slowly, their own silent fears reflected in their weary, solemn expressions. There's no grand solution offered, no reassuring words, only the shared understanding of an impending, relentless wave. The very atmosphere feels charged, heavy with the weight of unseen dangers and the collective anxiety of a populace caught in an inescapable trap. The smell of carbolic, once perhaps a comfort, now just amplifies the sense of encroaching doom, a bitter reminder of the futile battle being waged. You realize that panic isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a living entity, seeping into the very fabric of the city, twisting ordinary interactions into something brittle and urgent. This isn't just about survival, it's about the erosion of composure, the slow, terrifying descent into a landscape governed by fear. It's a stark reminder of how deeply fear can infect not just the body, but the very soul of a community. You come across it abruptly, turning a corner, and the sight stops you cold. There, spanning a doorway usually bustling with life, are crude planks of wood, roughly nailed across the entrance. The wood is new raw pine, its pale grain a stark, almost violent contrast to the dark, peeling paint of the door and frame. You can almost smell the faint, fresh scent of splintered timber, incongruous amidst the damp, earthy aroma of the alleyway. The nails hammered through, their heads glinting dully, look brutally final, holding the barrier fast, sealing whatever lies within away from the world outside. You reach out a hand, almost involuntarily, your fingers hovering inches from the rough surface. The sheer force required to erect such a barricade is evident in the splintered edges, the slight give of the wood that still feels immensely strong. It's not just a closed door. It's an absolute declaration, a physical manifestation of an invisible enemy's presence. A chill creeps up your arm not from the air, but from the stark, unsettling finality of the scene. The silence radiating from behind that barricade is profound, an unnatural void in a city that never truly sleeps. A figure in the street, an old woman bundled in a threadbare shawl, catches your eye. She glances at the door, then quickly away, her lips tightening, a nervous tremor passing through her. She clutches a small, stained handkerchief to her mouth, her gaze darting, wary, as if afraid to acknowledge the very existence of the sealed entrance. No one lingers here. Those who pass quicken their steps, their eyes fixed firmly ahead, refusing to meet yours, refusing to acknowledge the chilling truth that this door represents. The air around it feels heavy, charged with a palpable tension, a sense of deep collective unease. You notice a faded chalk mark on the wall beside the door, a crude cross or perhaps an initial, the meaning unclear but its intent undeniably grim. It's a marker, a warning, a demarcation line drawn in desperation. The light here, already weak, seems to shy away from the barricade, casting it in deeper, more forbidding shadow, turning it into a silent, imposing sentry-guarding secrets too awful to contemplate. The usual sounds of distant carts and muffled cries seem strangely distant, almost irrelevant, against the oppressive quiet of this isolated spot. You understand with a sudden, chilling clarity that this barricaded door isn't just about protecting the outside from what's within. It's a stark, brutal symbol of absolute desperate isolation, a physical tearing apart of the community. It forces you to confront how quickly empathy can curdle into fear, how a shared space can become a terrifying boundary, and how easily the promise of protection can transform into a sentence of solitary dread. You realize the splintered wood isn't just a physical barrier, it's a visible scar on the face of the city, marking a place where hope has been abandoned. You step towards the embankment and the air assaults you not with a gentle breeze but a physical blow. It's not just a bad smell, this is the Great Stink, a monumental suffocating reek that seems to crawl under your skin and into your very bones. Your nose burns, your eyes water involuntarily, and your stomach gives a sudden violent lurch, threatening to empty itself there and then. It's a profound, complex odor. The sharp, metallic tang of industrial waste, the cloying, sickly sweet decay of countless organic horrors, and an overwhelming fecal stench that feels like the very breath of a dying beast. This isn't just a smell. It's a sensory assault, a miasma so thick you feel you could almost taste it, a bitter chemical coating on your tongue that defies all attempts to swallow it away. The relentless summer heat, instead of offering relief, acts as an amplifier, baking the putrid surface of the river and intensifying every foul particle, driving it deep into your lungs with every desperate breath. You pull your handkerchief to your face, pressing it tightly, but it's a futile gesture. The stench permeates everything, clinging to your clothes, your hair, even the imagined taste in your mouth. You cast your gaze upon the Thames itself, and it's not the broad, flowing ribbon of water you might once have romanticized. This is a vast, oily, murky expanse of sludge, a river-turned sewer, its surface a horrifying tapestry of unidentifiable debris, festering waste, and a dull, almost greenish scum that bubbles faintly in places, releasing fresh gouts of pure, concentrated foulness directly into the humid air. The water looks thick, viscous, as if it struggles to move, groaning under the weight of the city's accumulated filth. All along the embankment, people are reacting. Gentlemen, their faces are sickly green beneath their sweat-soaked top hats, clutch perfumed handkerchiefs to their mouths and noses, their expressions a grim mask of revulsion. Ladies, usually composed, now wilt, their elaborate bonnets doing little to shield them from the relentless assault. You see a young boy, perhaps drawn by a morbid curiosity, lean too close to the edge, only to recoil sharply, gagging, his mother pulling him back with a swift, desperate yank, her own eyes wide with a mixture of disgust and fear. There's no conversation here, only strained silences punctuated by hurried coughs, involuntary retches, and the low, collective murmurs of profound discomfort. Everyone moves with a desperate, hurried pace, their shoulders hunched as if trying to shrink away from the invisible enemy in the air, seeking some impossible refuge from the pervasive stench. Even the distant sounds of the city, the clatter of carts, the cries of vendors seem muffled, distorted by the overwhelming presence of the stink, as if it's absorbing all other sensations, demanding singular attention. You watch as a barge, its deck laden with cargo, passes slowly, its oarsmen visibly straining, their faces contorted in grimaces of discomfort, their bodies subtly tensing with each inhale. They avert their eyes from the shore, focusing only on the sluggish current, as if acknowledging the river's terrible dominion would somehow make them more vulnerable. You realize with a chilling clarity that this isn't just an inconvenience. It's a profound corruption. The very lifeline of London, the magnificent Thames, has become its gaping wound, exhaling its essence of filth and decay, a stark, visceral reminder of how deeply humanity's neglect can transform and contaminate even the most fundamental forces of nature, turning what should sustain life into a potent, terrifying source of disease and dread. It's a bitter, suffocating truth, inhaled with every painful breath. You step out and the stench hits you like a physical wall, the full, suffocating breath of the Great Stink. Your stomach clenches, a desperate lurch that pulls a ragged gasp of foul air deep into your lungs. It's too much, an invisible, cloying weight pressing in. Instinctively, your hand fumbles, seeking refuge in your pocket. You pull out a clean linen handkerchief, perhaps dabbed with lavender oil this morning, a hopeful, fragrant shield against the city's grim reality. You raise it to your face, pressing the soft, cool fabric against your nose and mouth. For a brief, fleeting moment, there's a reprieve. The faint, sweet scent of lavender rises, a delicate illusion of cleanliness, a small, private pocket of normalcy in a world gone putrid. You inhale deeply, trying to draw only the floral notes to filter out the relentless assault. But it's a fragile dam against a tidal wave. The lavender quickly mingles, then struggles, then is utterly overwhelmed by the pervasive stench. The linen, once a barrier, now feels like a thin, porous veil, merely tinting the rotten air rather than truly blocking it. The undeniable smell of decay seeps through, stronger than any perfume. You watch others, scattered along the street, performing the same desperate ritual. A gentleman, his face pale and drawn, holds a silk square to his mouth, his shoulders hunched in profound resignation. A young woman, her eyes wide with fear, presses a simpler cotton cloth to her face, her gaze fixed on the murky river, as if willing the foulness to simply disappear. Their movements are identical. The swift, almost panicked gesture, the brief moment of hopeful inhalation, followed by the slow, defeated slump as the illusion cracks. There's no direct eye contact, only a shared, silent acknowledgement of this communal, futile act. The longer you hold the handkerchief, the more damp it becomes, absorbing the very humidity that carries the stench. Its sweet scent fades, replaced by a subtle, underlying grittiness, a damp, metallic flavor that seems to have permeated the fabric itself. You can feel the air, heavy and thick, passing through the linen, carrying its microscopic burdens directly to your lungs. The hope you'd invested in that small square of cloth dissipates, leaving behind only a bitter taste, a profound sense of helplessness. It's a chilling irony, you realize, that the very thing meant to offer comfort and protection only serves to underscore the inescapable nature of the threat. This small, scented square of linen, a symbol of genteel attempts to maintain order, is utterly powerless against the raw, visceral reality of the city's decay. It's a stark, undeniable truth. Some things simply cannot be masked, cannot be covered, cannot be wished away. And in that moment, the futility of such a small shield against such an enormous, invisible enemy settles deep within your chest. You're standing in a small, quiet room, a stark contrast to the clamour and stench of the London streets you just left behind. The air here, though faintly stale, lacks the overwhelming putridity that has become the city's grim signature. Instead, there's a subtle scent of old paper, a faint metallic tang of ink, and perhaps a hint of lamp oil. Before you, spread across a sturdy oak table, is a vast, meticulously detailed map of Broad Street and its surrounding parishes. It's a beautifully rendered thing, full of precise lines, tiny labels for street names, and even the individual outlines of buildings, a miniature, ordered version of the sprawling chaos outside. A man, his brow furrowed in concentration, leans over the map, his breath soft and even, a sharp counterpoint to the hurried, panicked breaths of the world beyond this room. He's holding a small, delicate pin, its head a vibrant red catching the dull light from the single gas lamp overhead. His movements are precise, almost reverent. You watch as his hand hovers, then descends, pressing the pin with a soft, barely audible prick into the thick paper. The sound is tiny, insignificant in itself, yet it reverberates through the quiet room with an astonishing weight, a punctuation mark in the unfolding narrative of tragedy. You lean closer, your gaze drawn to the newly placed pin. Each red dot, you realize, marks a household, a home where life has been violently extinguished. Initially, your eyes struggle to discern a pattern, seeing only a random scattering of scarlet across the dense urban landscape. It feels like looking at stars, beautiful but seemingly without order. But then, as the man continues his grim work, placing another pin, then another, a subtle rhythm begins to emerge. His fingers, stained with ink, move with an almost feverish intensity, guided by lists of names and addresses, each action a silent testament to a life lost. You start to trace the connections, an invisible web stretching between the scarlet points. Your eyes widen, there's a noticeable cluster forming, a dense constellation of pins tightening around a specific area, a particular junction of streets. It's not the random spread you expected. It's a focal point, a terrifying bullseye in the heart of the city. You observe the man, his eyes narrowed, his jaw set. He doesn't look up, doesn't offer a word, but his entire posture speaks of profound absorption, of a mind wrestling with a monumental, horrifying puzzle. He pushes another pin home, this one just inches from the last, almost touching it, and the cluster now seems to radiate outwards, a dark, visible stain on the pristine paper. You glance at the edge of the map and your eye catches a small circular icon, a public water pump, then another further away with fewer pins surrounding it, and then your gaze snaps back to the densest cluster, to its very epicenter, and there, right at its heart, a distinct hand-drawn circle marks another pump. A sudden chilling clarity washes over you, a jolt of understanding that is both intellectual and deeply visceral. The random madness, the unseen miasma, the pervasive fear, it wasn't random at all. You feel a profound shiver run down your spine, not from cold, but from the stark, terrifying elegance of the emerging truth. This isn't just a map, it's a silent accusation, a visual representation of how life and death are intimately, terrifyingly intertwined with the very infrastructure of a city. The simple act of pressing a pin, of plotting points of death, has transformed chaotic suffering into a discernible pattern, turning an incomprehensible plague into something that might be understood. You realize with a heavy heart the immense power of seeing, of observing, of transforming raw, bewildering tragedy into a tangible, fightable truth. You feel the crisp, cool edge of the paper beneath your thumb, a stark contrast to the clammy, greasy texture of the grimy railing you lean against. The document, a meticulously drawn street plan, rustles softly in the faint, damp breeze, carrying with it the faint scent of ink and aged cellulose, a clean, almost antiseptic smell utterly at odds with the profound, pervasive odor of this alleyway. Here the air is a thick, foul soup, decaying refuse, stagnant water, and the sharp, undeniable tang of human waste. It's a battle of the senses, the fragile cleanness of your task against the overwhelming filth of the city. Your boots, heavy and scuffed, squelch softly on the uneven, damp cobbles as you push forward. Each step is a deliberate effort, navigating around piles of unidentifiable rubbish, puddles of murky liquid, and the occasional discarded, rotting scrap of food. Your gaze darts from the precise lines on the paper to the dilapidated facades of the houses around you, trying to match the numbered doors, the specific turns, to the grim reality unfolding before your eyes. The houses lean inwards, as if whispering secrets to each other, their windows grimy and broken, some stuffed with rags, others merely gaping holes into shadowed interiors. You follow a narrow passage barely wide enough for one person, the walls slick with a cold, greasy film that smells faintly of mold and despair. A child no older than 5 watches you from a doorway, its face smudged with dirt, its eyes wide and vacant. It doesn't move, just observes your passage with an unnerving stillness, its silence more potent than any cry. Its gaze feels like a question, an unspoken challenge to your presence in this place, a place of forgotten lives and unspoken suffering. Further on, a woman, her face etched with a profound weariness, pauses her work scrubbing a piece of stained fabric in a bucket to cast a quick, wary glance your way. Her eyes linger on the official-looking papers in your hand, a flicker of suspicion, perhaps, or a fleeting spark of desperate hope, before she turns back to her relentless, futile labor. Her shoulders are stooped, her movements slow, a testament to the grinding hardship of her days. The rhythmic splash of water against the bucket is the only sound, a dull, monotonous beat against the city's deeper hum of decay. This meticulous work, this tracing of lines and matching of numbers, feels both impossibly grand and utterly insignificant in the face of such overwhelming human misery. You realize that behind every precise annotation, every marked dwelling on your paper, lies a story of suffering, of a life fighting for breath against the crushing weight of the slums. It's a sobering thought. To chart a path through a plague, you must first walk directly into its heart, feeling the grime beneath your feet, breathing its foul air, and bearing witness to the countless invisible tragedies that ink and paper can never truly convey. You step into the cramped, low-ceilinged washhouse and the air immediately assaults you. It's a dense, suffocating mix of steaming water, harsh lye soap, and something far more insidious, the undeniable metallic tang of human sickness, clinging to the damp walls and rising in faint, sickly plumes from the overflowing tubs. Your throat feels tight, a dry, uncomfortable rasp against the overwhelming humidity. Your eyes prickle not just from the steam, but from the raw, acrid edge of the cleansing agents trying and failing to conquer the deeper, more unsettling odor. Before you, a woman, her arms red and swollen from immersion in scalding water, labors with a grim, relentless energy. She's perhaps in her 50s, but her face, gaunt and etched with lines of exhaustion, suggests a life far harder. Her heavy canvas apron is splattered with dark, unidentifiable stains, a grim map of her daily toil. You watch as she plunges a thick, stained sheet into a bubbling vat, the sound of the wet fabric hitting the water, a heavy, sodden splash that echoes in the close space. She grinds it against a corrugated washboard, her muscles bunching and releasing with each arduous stroke, the rhythm a desperate, tireless drumbeat against the relentless tide of contamination. She lifts a piece of linen from the water, holding it up for a moment not to inspect for cleanliness, but as if presenting evidence. The fabric, once white, is now a pale, unsettling yellow streaked with disturbing brown and green. Your stomach clenches, a knot of revulsion twisting deep within. These aren't merely common household stains. These are the indelible marks of the plague, the virulent outpourings of a body in violent revolt. She doesn't speak, but her eyes, meeting yours across the steaming room, are wide with a profound, unspoken horror. In their depths, you read the stories of entire families, of neighbors, of streets, all silently screaming from the threads of these soiled cloths. She drops the cloth back into the vat with a heavy sigh, a sound that speaks volumes of despair, of resignation, of a weariness that goes beyond physical exhaustion. You notice the sheer volume of such stained items, piled high in baskets, overflowing onto the damp stone floor. It's a never-ending deluge, a stark, visceral testament to how deeply the illness has permeated the very homes and lives of this neighborhood. Another woman, younger but with the same hollow-eyed look, enters carrying a fresh, overflowing bundle, its contents giving off the same sickening, metallic odor. She merely nods to the older woman, a shared grim understanding passing between them before adding her load to the mounting pile. You realize with a chilling certainty that this small, steamy washhouse is a silent confessional, bearing witness to 1,000 unspoken tragedies. These fabrics, once intimate parts of domestic life, are now raw, horrifying records of suffering, crying out their silent testimony. And in the unwavering, methodical movements of the washerwomen, you see not just labor, but a profound, almost defiant act of bearing witness, confronting the plague's intimate, disgusting truth, one soiled linen at a time, scrubbing at the stains of a city's untold agonies. You step into the tavern and the scent hits you immediately, a cloying mix of stale ale, sawdust and something else, a faint, almost sickly sweetness that tries and fails to mask the deeper, creeping smell of the city's unwashed desperation. The interior, usually bustling with boisterous laughter, is eerily quiet, sparsely populated by a few hunched figures nursing their drinks. The tavern keeper, a barrel-chested man with a perpetually ruddy face, is behind the bar, polishing a tankard with an almost obsessive vigor, his movements too quick, too sharp. You approach the counter, your boots making a faint, almost impolite scuff on the worn floorboards. He glances up, his eyes a little too bright, a smile too wide fixed on his face. He slides a freshly polished pint glass towards you, its surface gleaming, before returning to his relentless polishing, his gaze fixed on the gleaming copper. You notice his hand trembles slightly, an almost imperceptible tremor that belies his jovial facade. He clears his throat, a small, nervous sound, and wipes a perfectly clean section of the bar again and again. You try to speak, to mention the growing sickness, the fears whispered on the streets. He cuts you off with a quick, dismissive wave of his hand, a slight, almost angry jerk of his head. He speaks of bad air, of weak constitutions, of people not drinking enough good ale. His voice is a little too loud, too insistent, filling the silence with a forced, brittle cheer. He avoids your gaze, instead focusing on a distant corner, then on his polishing, as if the truth itself might be hiding in the gleam of the metal. His brow, though, is furrowed, a faint sheen of sweat visible despite the cool interior of the pub. A solitary drinker in the corner, a wizened old man, coughs into his fist, a dry, rasping sound that seems to hang in the air for a moment too long. The tavern keeper flinches, a barely perceptible tightening of his jaw, before he forces another loud, booming laugh, reaching for a fresh pint to draw. You see the brief, fleeting glances exchanged between the few patrons, their eyes holding a shared, unspoken fear that the tavern keeper so vehemently denies. They drink their ale quickly, almost desperately, their shoulders hunched, trying to make themselves small, trying to disappear into the comforting, albeit false, warmth of the gaslight. You feel the tension, a taut wire stretched between the comforting familiarity of the tavern and the terrifying reality pressing in from outside. He pours your drink, the amber liquid cascading into the glass, a seemingly normal act that feels profoundly out of place. This forced normalcy, this fierce, almost violent clinging to routine, you realize, isn't simply ignorance. It's a profound, desperate act of self-preservation, a shield of denial against a truth too monstrous to contemplate, especially when that truth threatens the very foundations of one's world. And in that moment, you see how much courage it takes, sometimes, just to keep a terrifying, unthinkable truth at bay. The air in this rather well-appointed drawing room is thick, a deliberate blend of pipe tobacco and the cloying, artificial sweetness of lavender potpourri. It's a scent designed to banish, to deny, the underlying urban reek, a subtle, confident defiance. You stand amongst a gathering of gentlemen, their faces smooth, their clothes impeccable, as they nod sagely at the speaker. The contrast to the raw, putrid breath of the Thames, the persistent tang of the slums, is stark, almost absurd. Here the world feels neatly contained, explained, sanitized even. A portly physician, his spectacles gleaming, gestures expansively with a dismissive wave of his hand. He speaks with unwavering certainty, his voice a low, resonant rumble of noxious effluvia and corrupt exhalations rising from the earth. He taps a manicured finger against his temple, a gesture of profound self-assurance, as if the very act of naming the enemy, of containing it within the neat confines of a theory, is enough to defeat it. You notice the slight, almost imperceptible sneer on the lips of a younger, more refined gentleman beside you, a silent affirmation of this accepted, comforting wisdom. The conversations around you are low, confident murmurs. You catch snippets of bad air, ground poisons, and the vapors of decay, spoken with such conviction that you might almost believe they'd personally tasted every particle. They describe a London where illness rides on the wind, a grand, unseen miasma swirling above the rooftops. Their suggested remedies are always about purifying the atmosphere, burning aromatic herbs, advising the wealthy to flee to the clean countryside, or simply airing out rooms. Their words carry a weight of authority, yet they feel curiously detached, as if the grim reality of the sickness is something observed from behind a very thick pane of glass. You recall the desperate gulp of the Thames water, the raw sewage clinging to the banks, the soiled linen in the washerwoman's hands. That memory is sharp, visceral, a brutal counterpoint to this genteel intellectual exercise. You feel a prickle of frustration, a slow burn of disbelief at the sheer chasm between their elegant, abstract theories and the undeniable, tangible filth you've witnessed firsthand. Their confidence, their unwavering conviction in the bad air, seems to float utterly untouched above the actual physical rot that has claimed so many lives. It's a chilling demonstration, you realize, of how desperately humanity can cling to comfortable explanations, how easily it can be seduced by elegant theories, even when the undeniable truth is literally in the water, under its very nose. This room, filled with learned men and their certainties, feels almost more dangerous than the plague itself, for in their confident misdirection, a crucial, terrifying truth remains utterly, tragically obscured. The weight of their certainty, you understand, is a heavy price to pay for such a profound, collective blindness. You step into the grand, oak-paneled room, and the air immediately feels different. It's cool, strangely still and heavy, with the scent of beeswax polish, old leather, and a faint, lingering aroma of stale cigars. It's a deliberate, almost arrogant cleanness, utterly at odds with the pervasive stench of the city just beyond the heavy velvet-draped windows. A thick Persian rug muffles your footsteps, swallowing the usual clatter of your boots, making you feel acutely aware of your own intrusion into this rarefied space. Before you, seated around a vast, gleaming table, are the members of the Board of Health. Their expressions are composed, their posture rigid, almost regal. You offer your findings, perhaps a rolled-up map or a sheaf of notes, the raw data of sickness and death from the Broad Street pump. You can feel the nervous tremor in your hands as you lay them down, the cool, smooth wood of the table a stark contrast to the rough, grimy cobbles you've traversed. You speak, your voice perhaps a little too urgent, a little too raw, recounting the stories you've gathered, the patterns you've uncovered. A gentleman at the head of the table, his jowls heavy, stifles a polite cough into a crisp white handkerchief. His eyes, though fixed upon you, seem to hold a profound, almost weary disinterest, as if your words are merely an unfortunate, predictable interruption to his afternoon. He doesn't move, doesn't gesture, but a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his posture, a slight tilt of his head, conveys a profound, unspoken dismissal. The air in the room, once merely cool, begins to feel frigid, permeated with a subtle yet unmistakable scent of official disdain. Another member, a thin, sharp-faced man, slowly taps a pencil against a stack of official-looking papers, the rhythmic asterisk tap-tap-tap, a quiet, insistent counterpoint to your impassioned plea. He doesn't meet your gaze. His eyes are fixed on some distant, unseen point beyond your shoulder, his lips pressed into a thin, tight line. You watch as a third, younger man stifles a yawn, his hand discreetly covering his mouth, his lack of engagement more insulting than any direct challenge. Their silence isn't one of rapt attention, but a dense, impenetrable wall of polite indifference. You continue, detailing the evidence, the undeniable truth of contaminated water. You feel the passion rising in your chest, a desperate, almost angry surge against their placid, unyielding fronts. But it feels as though your words, charged with the brutal reality of suffering, simply dissipate in the plush, airless room, absorbed by the heavy curtains and the polished wood. They glance at each other, not at you, their expressions conveying a shared, unspoken sentiment. Here we go again. You realize with a chilling certainty that your earnest, urgent truth, painstakingly gathered from the very gutters and sick rooms of London, is simply incompatible with the comfortable, entrenched theories held within these walls. The very air they breathe, so carefully filtered, seems to protect them not just from physical miasma, but from the unsettling truths that threaten their established order. Your desperation, you understand, is nothing but a tedious inconvenience, a minor discord in their carefully orchestrated symphony of official certainties. It's a bitter, suffocating truth. Some walls, you discover, are built not of brick and mortar, but of unwavering, confident ignorance, and they are the hardest to breach of all. The heavy metallic clang reverberates, jarring your teeth as the manhole cover is finally wrenched open. Before you even glimpse the darkness, a blast of unimaginable stench erupts from the void below, thick and nauseating. It's a raw, visceral assault, the cloying sweetness of decay, the pungent tang of ancient sewage, and the damp, earthy reek of forgotten tunnels, all coalescing into a single, overwhelming miasma that makes your eyes water and your stomach lurch violently. You instinctively recoil, a guttural cough tearing from your throat, but the urge to see, to understand, pulls you closer. You grip the cold, rough iron rung, its surface slick with unseen grime, and begin your descent. Each step takes you deeper into an abyssal darkness, the muffled sounds of the city above fading with every breath. The air grows colder, damper, clinging to your skin like a clammy shroud. The beam of the lantern, clutched by the grim-faced man who guides you, cuts a hesitant path through the absolute blackness, revealing only glimpses of ancient, glistening brickwork, streaked with dark, viscous flows that shimmer faintly in the unsteady light. You can feel the narrowness of the shaft pressing in around you, a suffocating embrace of stone and filth. Finally, your boots land on a squelching, uneven surface. The ground here is a mix of slimy earth and something far more fluid. Around you, the lantern's hesitant glow paints a scene of subterranean horror. You stand at the edge of a vast, stagnant cesspool, its surface a grotesque, oily black, disturbed only by the gentle, sickening churn of unseen currents. You can make out shapes, indistinct and horrifying discarded refuse, bundles of unidentifiable waste, all floating in a silent, slow dance of decay. A tiny, unseen splash sounds somewhere in the darkness, followed by a faint, rustling scurry, a quick, chilling reminder that you are not alone in this putrid underworld. The sheer volume of waste is overwhelming, a horrifying testament to the city's unseen digestive system, slowly churning below the bustling streets. You notice tiny, almost imperceptible streams trickling from the old brick walls, each one a minuscule vein feeding this dark, subterranean heart. The guide, his face a grim mask, gestures vaguely with his free hand, his eyes meeting yours, a shared understanding of profound disgust and unsettling revelation passing between you. He points to a narrow, arching tunnel, a deeper channel leading into the impenetrable gloom, hinting at further, unseen connections. A chilling thought settles in your gut. This grotesque, hidden reservoir of filth lies directly beneath the very houses and streets you walk every day, its unseen contents just inches from the foundations of a thriving metropolis. You realize that the invisible is often far more dangerous than the seen, that beneath the polished veneer of civilization lies a profound, festering truth, a hidden world that quietly, relentlessly influences the lives and deaths unfolding on the sunlit surface above. The echo of dripping water here in this cesspool now sounds like the slow, relentless ticking of a terrible clock. A faint, rhythmic murmur reaches your ears, a sound almost swallowed by the damp earth, yet insistent like a slow, steady pulse beneath the world. You've descended deeper now, beyond the stagnant cesspool, into a narrow, winding passage where the air, while still heavy, lacks the overpowering stench from above. Here it's just cold, damp and thick with the scent of wet stone and ancient soil. The beam of the lantern, clutched by your grim-faced guide, cuts a hesitant path through the absolute darkness, revealing glistening dampness on rough-hewn, ancient brickwork. You press your palm to the cool, raw rock face, feeling a subtle internal vibration, the constant, patient work of underground springs. Then you see it. A seam in the ancient bedrock, from which a steady, crystal-clear trickle emerges, pooling into a small, pristine basin before disappearing into the deeper earth. The water is startlingly clear, a visual sigh of relief, unblemished by the grime and decay that pervades the city above. The murmur is louder now, the soft, ceaseless song of uncorrupted water, a stark, breathtaking contrast to the filth you've just navigated. Your guide, his face a shadow, gestures to it, then to an old rusted pipe nearby. It's a dark, unnatural intrusion, a metal artery disappearing upwards, directly into the stone above you. This pipe, you realize with a sudden, chilling clarity, is the silent connection. This pristine, life-giving source, so hidden, so seemingly pure, is the wellspring for the very pump that sits above, in the heart of the city, in Broad Street. The pure water, a giver of life, flows relentlessly, blindly towards a source that it can't know is now contaminated. A profound shiver runs through you, a cold dread that has nothing to do with the subterranean chill. This beautiful, innocent aquifer meant to sustain is now a conduit for unseen death. You see the gentle current, taste the clean moisture in the air, yet simultaneously you feel the crushing weight of its vulnerability. The water, a symbol of life itself, has become the unwitting messenger of destruction. It's a terrifying truth. The very purity you seek can become the most insidious weapon when unknowingly touched by a silent, invisible enemy. You push deeper into the warren of narrow alleyways, where the sky is just a thin, grey ribbon above. The air here is a choking, potent blend of damp refuse, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present, cloying sweetness of decay that makes your eyes water. Your boots slip on slick, uneven cobblestones, past overflowing privies and dark, unidentifiable stains that seem to coat every surface. It's a place of relentless survival, where every necessity comes at a profound cost. You finally reach a small, open courtyard barely wider than a carriage. Here, amidst the pervasive stench, a scene of grim ritual unfolds. A queue of men, women, and children, their faces pale and drawn, snakes towards a single hand-operated water pump. Its iron handle is smooth and worn from countless hands, its spout a dull, tarnished brass. But it's not the pump itself that holds your gaze, it's the ladle. A single, battered tin ladle chained to the pump passes from hand to hand. Its surface is dulled, scratched, and faintly filmed with a greasy sheen, a testament to its shared, unceasing use. You watch as a young woman, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, reaches for the ladle. Her fingers, thin and chapped, touch the surface where countless others have already gripped. She pumps the handle with a weary, practiced motion, and the water that emerges is not crystal clear, but a faint, milky grey catching the dim light. She brings the ladle to her lips, her eyes, hollowed by fatigue, darting to yours for a fleeting moment, a shared, silent recognition of profound, unquestioning need. You see her swallow, a sharp, almost painful gulp that seems to tear at her throat, before she passes the ladle to the next person in line. A child, no older than 5, eagerly grasps the communal ladle, its small fingers covering the same worn spots where the woman's hands, then another's, had just been. Its face is smudged, its lips cracked, but its eyes hold that universal, urgent thirst. The boy drinks deeply, spilling some of the murky liquid down his chin, before releasing the ladle with a wet clatter, ready for the next parched throat. No one cleans it, no one pauses. The line moves with a slow, relentless rhythm, each person taking their turn, their necessity outweighing any fleeting thought of contamination. The soft, repetitive sound of slurping and gulping mixes with the distant coughs and murmurs of the crowded courtyard, forming a grim, almost hypnotic soundscape. You feel a profound sense of horror, a chilling understanding. This shared ladle, this communal source meant to bind a community through a fundamental need, has instead become a terrifying, invisible conduit. Every hand that touches it, every mouth that drinks from it, unknowingly participates in a deadly ritual, passing not just water, but the silent, virulent threat that spreads through this entire, desperate neighborhood. It's a stark, brutal irony, how the very act of reaching for sustenance, of sharing life's most basic necessity, becomes, in these tragic times, the cruelest mechanism of communal death. The simple act of a shared drink, you realize, now carries an unspeakable, horrifying weight. You find yourself in a different world entirely. The air here, in this grand drawing room, is a delicate blend of lavender and expensive cigar smoke, mingling faintly with the aroma of roast meats and fine wines. It's warm, yet utterly free of the suffocating, putrid stench that clings to the city's lower streets. Your boots, which squelched on Broad Street's grimy cobbles just hours ago, now sink silently into thick Persian carpets, their threads vibrant and clean. Everything speaks of order, of separation, of an almost defiant refusal to acknowledge the chaos brewing beyond these heavy, polished oak doors. A footman, immaculate in his livery, moves with quiet precision. He offers you a tall, slender crystal glass, its surface cool and smooth against your palm. You watch as he pours from an elegant, slender bottle, the water within sparkling with an almost unnatural clarity, catching the soft glow of the gaslight. It's not the milky, suspicious liquid from the public pumps. This is bottled water, fetched from distant, pristine springs far from the tainted Thames. It's an indulgence, a luxury, and in this summer of fear, a vital, undeniable shield. You raise the glass to your lips. The water is cool, crisp, and utterly tasteless, a revelation after the metallic, earthy tang of the city's usual fare. You drink deeply, feeling it glide clean down your throat, a pure, unblemished sensation. Around you, other gentlemen and ladies do the same, their gestures unhurried, their faces serene. A stout gentleman, his waistcoat impeccably starched, takes a slow, deliberate sip, then dabs his lips with a linen napkin, his eyes meeting yours with a knowing, almost conspiratorial glance. It's a silent affirmation. They are safe here. They are insulated. A lady, her silk gown rustling softly, gestures vaguely with a gloved hand towards the window, her expression one of genteel distaste. You don't hear her words, but the movement, the slight curl of her lip, implies a conversation about the unfortunate situation outside, the common ailments afflicting the poorer districts. There's a quiet confidence in their movements, a subtle air of detachment that suggests the plague is a problem for others*, a grim reality that their wealth, their clean water, and their high walls effectively keep at bay. Their comfort, their very breath, feels like a deliberate act of defiance against the lurking death. You look at the clear water in your hand, then back to the confident faces around you. This bottle, this small, unassuming vessel, represents more than just a drink. It represents a profound, almost unshakable belief in immunity, a tangible symbol of a world divided. You realize the chilling truth. The privilege of pure water has built a fragile yet powerful shield around these lives, creating an illusion of invincibility. It's a stark, unsettling reminder of how deeply the currents of class and circumstance can dictate not just one's life, but one's very chance of survival, making the threat of death itself a luxury afforded only to the unfortunate. And you wonder, with a sudden, cold dread, how long such a fragile shield can truly last against a force that respects no boundaries. You stand in the bustling, foul-smelling street, the usual clamour intensified by the desperate shouts of a hawker. But it's not his booming voice that captures you, it's the sweet, cloying scent of cheap perfume and something vaguely medicinal, a mix of alcohol and herbs, struggling to cut through the pervasive urban stench. Your stomach clenches not just from the foul air, but from a familiar cynicism born of too many promises. Before you, a makeshift stall adorned with gaudy red banners proclaiming miraculous cholera cure and instantaneous relief. Draws a desperate crowd. The hawker, a portly man with slicked-back hair and a knowing grin, holds up a small, dark bottle, its label crudely printed. He gestures grandly, his voice booming with theatrical conviction, describing the potent virtues within. You watch the faces in the crowd, a mixture of the hopeful, the desperate, and the utterly terrified. A young mother, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow, clutches a few meager coins in her hand, her gaze fixed on the bottle with an almost religious fervor. Her thin shoulders are hunched, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her entire posture a testament to overwhelming fear and a desperate hope for a miracle. He uncorks a bottle with a flourish, and the air around you is momentarily filled with a sharper, more acrid scent, a potent mix of spirits and something herbal, almost like turpentine. He pours a small measure into a tarnished silver spoon, extending it towards a frail, elderly man who barely manages to hold himself upright. The old man's hand trembles violently as he takes the spoon, his lips, already tinged blue, parting in a desperate, eager gulp. His eyes squeeze shut, a grimace twisting his face as the liquid goes down, followed by a wet, hacking cough. The hawker pats his back with a rough, jovial thump, declaring him cured, with a booming laugh that rings hollow in the heavy air. The old man coughs again, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, a brief, fleeting sense of false hope. He even manages a weak nod, a testament to the sheer power of belief, or perhaps simply the temporary anesthetic effect of the alcohol. Other desperate hands reach out, offering their coins, their last pennies, for a chance at this promised salvation. You watch a small child, its face pale and drawn, clutching its mother's hand, its gaze fixed on the miracle bottle, a silent plea for relief. You feel a profound, bitter taste in your own mouth, not from the air, but from the raw injustice of the scene. This isn't healing, it's a cruel, cynical exploitation of the most primal fear, the deepest human need. This miracle cure, this potent mix of alcohol and placebo, offers nothing but a fleeting illusion, a false balm against a relentless, invisible foe. And in that moment you realize with a chilling clarity that the plague not only ravages bodies, but also preys on the desperate hope of those who remain, turning their very yearning for life into a commodity easily sold and bitterly consumed. The deepest poison, you understand, isn't just in the water or the air, but in the heart of those who profit from such overwhelming despair. The sharp, insistent asterisk thwack 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 of a hammer on wood cuts through the oppressive, humid air. It's a sound that has become a chilling, omnipresent pulse in this part of London, rhythmic and relentless. You feel it in your teeth, a dull vibration resonating through the very ground beneath your boots. It's not the cheerful construction of a new home, nor the steady toil of a carpenter building furniture. This is a sound steeped in grim finality, the grim anthem of a city in crisis. You round a corner drawn by the insistent noise, and there it is, a small, usually unassuming workshop, now transformed into a hub of macabre industry. The scent of fresh pine, raw and resinous, mixes with the underlying, unshakable smell of decay that clings to the streets. But this pine scent, usually pleasant, now carries an unsettling weight, a fresh, cold promise. Through the open doorway you see the undertaker himself, a burly man with thick, powerful forearms, his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing a sheen of sweat. He swings his hammer with a practiced, almost brutal efficiency, driving nails into rough, unvarnished planks. The workshop floor is littered with wood shavings, sawdust, and the crude, unmistakable shapes of freshly assembled coffins. They sit unfinished in various stages of construction, stacked against the walls like grim, empty promises. You notice one, smaller than the rest, tucked into a corner, a child's coffin, its proportions heartbreakingly tiny, awaiting its grim purpose. The raw wood looks stark, unforgiving, a desperate contrast to the soft shrouds they will eventually hold. The undertaker doesn't look up, his gaze fixed on his work, his movements precise and unhurried despite the obvious urgency. His face, though grim, holds a strange, almost focused intensity, as if he is merely fulfilling a necessary, relentless demand. Passers-by hurry past, their heads down, their gazes fixed on the grimy pavement. No one lingers, no one openly stares. Yet you see the subtle shifts in their expressions, a tightening of the jaw, a quick, almost imperceptible flinch as the hammer connects with another nail. A young woman clutching a basket quickens her pace dramatically, her shawl pulled tight around her head as if the sound itself could infect her. The usual street chatter is muted here, swallowed by the ceaseless thwack 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 asterisk, a sound that leaves no room for casual conversation, only for the stark, undeniable truth it proclaims. The air, heavy with the scent of pine and something far more chilling, feels charged with a grim understanding. This isn't just a trade, it's a booming industry born from the deepest human suffering, transforming raw grief into a steady, reliable rhythm of work. The undertaker's golden hour, you realize with a profound sense of unease, is marked by the relentless hammering beat of death itself. It's a stark, unsettling truth. In the face of widespread calamity, humanity finds a way to endure, to adapt, even if that adaptation means profiting in the most visceral way from the sorrow that engulfs its very core. You stand on the edge of a field, not a manicured churchyard, but a bleak, desolate patch of earth on the outskirts of the city. The air here is colder, sharper, carrying the damp, metallic scent of freshly turned soil, mixed with an underlying, faintly sweet odor of decay that suggests something far more disturbing. Your boots sink slightly into the soft, churned mud, and the chill seeps up through the soles, a profound, unsettling cold that seems to penetrate to your very core. This is unconsecrated ground, a place of last resort, and it feels as desolate as the lives it now embraces. Before you, a scene of hurried, almost brutal efficiency unfolds. The rhythmic asterisk thud-thud-thud of shovels striking earth is constant, a grim, unrelenting beat. Two men, their faces streaked with mud and sweat, work with a desperate, tireless energy, their movements quick, almost frantic. They aren't digging individual grave. This is a long, raw trench, a gaping wound in the earth, its edges ragged and uneven. The soil they toss aside is dark, heavy, and clings to their shovels, a stark, visceral reminder of the countless bodies it will soon cover. You see a procession, if it can be called that, making its way across the muddy field. Not a funeral cortege of draped carriages, but a line of simple handcarts, pulled by weary, silent figures. Each cart carries a crude, unvarnished coffin, sometimes two, stacked precariously. There are no mourners walking alongside, no somber hymns. The silence from these figures is profound, broken only by the squelch of their boots and the rattling of the carts. You notice a solitary woman, her head bowed, standing a little distance away, her face a mask of profound grief, her shoulders shaking, but she makes no sound, no outcry. Even grief here is muted, swallowed by the sheer, overwhelming scale of death. As a coffin is lowered into the communal trench, there's no priest, no blessing, no comforting words. Just the grunt of the gravediggers as they push the rough wooden box into the waiting earth, followed by the immediate, dull thump of soil being shoveled back over it. The act is swift, almost perfunctory, a stark, brutal contrast to the traditional reverence of burial. It's a pragmatic, desperate measure, a necessary act to clear the dead before the living succumb. You feel the raw earth shift beneath your feet, a subtle tremor that seems to echo the hasty, unceremonious act of laying souls to rest. The profound lack of ritual, the brutal efficiency of it all, leaves a chill in your heart that no fire could thaw. You realize with a heavy, aching clarity that death in these harrowing times is no longer a personal tragedy, but a relentless logistical problem. The dignity of the deceased, the comforting rites for the living, all have been stripped away, eroded by the sheer, overwhelming tide of the plague. And you understand that when the living become too preoccupied with simply surviving, the final act of human compassion, a proper farewell, becomes a luxury that a city, drowning in its own dead, can no longer afford. The damp, heavy air presses in, carrying the pervasive, sickly sweet scent of the city's decay. You strain your ears, listening not for a sound, but for its absence. It's Sunday morning, a time when in any sane world the joyous clamour of church bells would spill across the rooftops, a comforting, familiar rhythm of faith and community. But today there is nothing, just a profound, unsettling quiet that seems to absorb all other sounds, making the distant creak of a carriage wheel or the lone, mournful cry of a hawker feel jarringly loud in its unexpected clarity. The silence itself is a cold, clammy hand pressing against your chest. You walk towards the imposing silhouette of St. Bride's, its ancient spire usually a beacon of sound. Today it stands mute against the grey sky, a solemn monument to an eroded faith. The massive oak doors, usually open, inviting, are now tightly shut, a stark, unyielding barrier. A rusted iron chain wraps crudely around the heavy handles, a physical padlock on a spiritual sanctuary. The steps leading up to the entrance, usually worn smooth by countless worshippers, are damp and unvisited, collecting a thin layer of grime, a visual testament to abandonment. A few figures pass, their heads down, their shoulders hunched. You notice an old woman, her shawl pulled tight around her face, pause for a moment before the silent church. Her lips move, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, but no sound escapes her. Her eyes, red-rimmed and vacant, lift to the closed doors, then to the unringing bell tower, her gaze holding a profound, heartbreaking desolation. She slowly shakes her head, a gesture of deep, weary resignation, before continuing her solitary, hurried journey, her footsteps echoing unnaturally on the deserted pavement. Her unspoken despair feels heavier than any sermon. The wind, when it gusts, carries no peal, no comforting chime, only the distant, acrid tang of the river and the ever-present, cloying scent of cheap disinfectant from some desperate dwelling. The emptiness in the air where the reverberating bronze should be is a tangible void, a gaping hole in the city's heart. It's a silence that isn't peaceful, it's a chilling, accusing void, a testament to unanswered prayers, to a divine presence that feels frighteningly distant or worse, entirely absent. You press your hand against the rough, cold stone of the church wall. It feels ancient, solid, yet strangely hollow, devoid of the spiritual warmth it should exude. The absence of those bells, you realize, isn't just a physical quiet, it's a profound spiritual silence, a deep, unsettling wound in the very soul of the city, when even the voice of God seems to have fallen silent, drowned out by the cries of the dying and the stench of decay, where, you wonder, do people turn for solace? This oppressive, bell-less quiet is a terrifying revelation. When the traditional conduits of hope cease to function, humanity is left with only the chilling echoes of its own despair. The biting damp of the evening air presses in, carrying the usual city smells, coal smoke, wet earth, and that faint, underlying tang of decay. You've been walking, your body tired, your spirit heavy with the day's grim discoveries. Your stomach rumbles, a hollow, insistent ache that speaks of neglected meals and a profound sense of exhaustion. The gas lamps cast long, uncertain shadows, making the familiar streets feel alien, threatening. Suddenly, a subtle warmth reaches you, a comforting, almost miraculous scent that cuts through the pervasive chill. It's the unmistakable aroma of freshly baked bread, yeast, and warm flour, a profound, primal smell that instantly stirs a deep, forgotten hunger. Your head snaps up. You trace the scent to a small, unassuming doorway bathed in the soft, flickering light of a single candle. You pause, watching. An old woman, her face a roadmap of hard living, but her eyes surprisingly bright, stands in the doorway. In her hands she holds a large, round loaf of bread, its crust golden brown, still steaming gently in the cool air. It radiates a quiet, inviting warmth. She glances down the street, her gaze lingering for a moment on the shadows, then her eyes find yours, holding a profound, unspoken message. Then a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, thin and pale, emerges from the deeper gloom of the alleyway opposite. He moves tentatively, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the bread. There's no expectation, only a desperate, silent hope in his posture. The old woman offers him the loaf, not a slice, not a crumb, but the whole warm thing. Her hands, gnarled and trembling, extend it with a deliberate, open gesture. The boy hesitates for a moment, then reaches out, his small, chapped fingers brushing hers as he takes the heavy, fragrant offering. You see the faint glint of tears in the old woman's eyes, quickly blinked away as she watches him clutch the bread to his chest, its warmth a small, fragile comfort. He doesn't speak, just nods, a quick, almost reverent bow of his head, before turning and disappearing back into the labyrinthine shadows, clutching his precious cargo. The old woman remains in her doorway for a moment longer, her gaze following him, then she retreats inside, the door closing softly behind her, leaving only the memory of warmth and a faint echo of that wonderful scent in the damp, cold air. You feel a strange, unexpected warmth bloom in your own chest, a gentle counterpoint to the city's profound chill. This wasn't a grand gesture, no public display of charity, but a quiet, almost furtive act of profound human kindness carried out in the face of overwhelming despair. It's a moment of unsettling beauty. You realize that even when life itself is cheap, when fear dictates every interaction, the simplest act of sharing, of offering warmth in the cold, can shine like a tiny, defiant spark in the deepest darkness, a testament to an enduring, fragile humanity that refuses to be extinguished. The deep, oppressive silence of the London night presses in, broken only by the distant, rhythmic clang of a watchman's boot on cobbles and the faint, unsettling cough that drifts from unseen windows. The air is cold, damp, and carries the pervasive, sickly sweet scent of illness that no amount of darkness can obscure. Your breath mists in the air, a fleeting, visible sign of life against the profound, encroaching gloom. You walk through a narrow alleyway where the tall, leaning buildings seem to swallow the weak light from the distant gas lamps. Just ahead, a single, unwavering circle of light cuts through the absolute blackness. It's the beam of a handheld lantern held steady purposefully by a figure standing at a doorway. As you draw closer, the faint light reveals a nurse, her simple cap a stark white against the darkness, her uniform practical and plain. Her face, illuminated from below, is etched with a profound weariness, but her eyes, though heavy, hold an unwavering, almost fierce intensity. She stands utterly still, her gaze fixed on something within the room, something unseen by you, yet clearly demanding her full, unbroken attention. You hear the faint, labored breathing of a patient from inside, a shallow, rattling sound that feels terribly close. Her posture is one of complete absorption, a sentinel against the encroaching night. Her hand, though small, grips the lantern with a remarkable steadiness, its beam a constant, defiant beacon against the all-consuming darkness. The light dances faintly on the grimy bricks of the doorway, making the shadows around her seem to recede, held at bay by her unwavering presence. You watch as a gust of wind whips down the alley, threatening to extinguish the flame. Her body tenses, subtly, her other hand instinctively coming up to cup the lantern, shielding it, her resolve palpable. The flame flickers, dips, but holds, an almost stubborn resistance to the elements. She doesn't flinch, doesn't look up. Her focus remains solely on the darkness beyond her, on the unseen struggle she battles in the quiet, desperate hours of the night. Her uniform, usually a symbol of professional detachment, now feels like a warrior's armor, worn in a silent, relentless battle. You feel a profound sense of awe, a quiet, almost reverent respect bloom within your chest. This isn't just a duty, it's a relentless, almost spiritual vigil, maintained minute by minute, hour by hour, in the face of overwhelming despair. This single, unwavering light held by this solitary figure isn't just illuminating a room. It's a powerful, defiant assertion of care, a small but potent spark against a vast, consuming darkness. And in that moment, you realize that courage in its purest form isn't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet, unflinching resolve of those who simply refuse to look away, choosing instead to hold their light steady, even when the night feels utterly endless and the odds seem impossibly stacked against them. You stand before it, the very heart of the mystery, and the first thing you notice is the cold, a palpable, almost radiating chill emanating from the heavy iron pump. The air around it, though still carrying the pervasive city stench, feels colder, damper, as if the pump itself is drawing the warmth from the surrounding atmosphere. Your eyes are fixed on the handle, a thick, black, gleaming bar of iron, smooth and worn from countless hands. It looks menacing, almost predatory in its quiet stillness. You reach out hesitantly and your fingers close around the cold iron. It's an immediate, profound shock to your skin, an icy metallic contact that feels utterly devoid of life, a physical emptiness that sends a shiver up your arm. The metal is unexpectedly heavy, solid, an immovable force that seems to resist your touch, as if warning you away. You can feel the minute grooves and imperfections worn into its surface, etched there by the desperate grip of 1,000 parched hands, each imprint a silent testament to a life, perhaps now extinguished. The sheer weight of its history, its purpose, presses down on you. You move to grasp the handle more firmly, a task that feels surprisingly arduous, as though the pump itself is reluctantly yielding to your touch. Your muscles tense with the effort. You push down and the internal mechanism groans, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through the iron and into your bones. It's a sound of old, overworked machinery, protesting its ceaseless toil, echoing the heavy sighs of a city burdened by its own despair. The water that emerges from the spout is cold, startlingly clear, a visual deception that belies its deadly secret. It cascades into the trough with a gurgling rush, a familiar, comforting sound that now feels profoundly sinister. You glance around at the silent street. There's no queue today, no frantic rush for water. The cobblestones around the pump, usually wet and muddy from constant use, are dry, gathering a thin layer of dust. A solitary, faded bouquet of wilted flowers lies at its base, a small, poignant tribute from someone who understands the pump's grim legacy. The absence of activity is a powerful statement, a testament to the horror it has wrought, to the knowledge that has finally, terribly, dawned upon the city. This pump, you realize, isn't just a simple mechanism for drawing water. It's a silent monument, a chilling metaphor for the invisible currents of life and death that flow beneath the surface of civilization. The cold iron of its handle, once a symbol of life-giving sustenance, now feels like a stark, undeniable harbinger of death, a physical embodiment of a truth finally, brutally understood. You pull your hand away, leaving behind the ghost of your own touch on its icy surface, carrying with you the profound, terrifying knowledge that even the most innocuous object can become an instrument of mass destruction, simply by remaining unseen, unexamined, and fatally misunderstood. You stand amongst a growing crowd, pressed close against the grimy shop fronts of Broad Street. The air, though still carrying the familiar, underlying tang of the city's unwashed desperation, is charged with a new kind of tension, a palpable silence, broken only by the shuffled footsteps and hushed, nervous murmurs of the onlookers. It's not the silence of fear that has plagued these streets for weeks, but an expectant quiet, a collective breath held, as everyone's gaze is fixed on the imposing, cold iron of the pump. Its dark spout, once a source of life, has become a symbol of terror. A figure steps forward, a man with a resolute, almost fierce determination etched on his features. He doesn't command attention with a booming voice, but with a quiet, unwavering certainty that cuts through the crowd's unease. He carries no grand pronouncements, no vials of miracle cure, only a simple, clean glass. His gaze sweeps over the faces of the crowd, then settles on the pump handle, that cold, smooth iron that has been touched by so many. You feel a prickle of unease in your stomach, a knot tightening as you anticipate his next move, knowing the grim history of this very spot. He reaches out, his hand firm, and grasps the pump handle. There's a collective, almost imperceptible flinch from the crowd, a subtle intake of breath, as if they fear the very touch could be lethal. He pushes down once, twice, a faint metallic groan echoing from within the mechanism. The clear, cold water gushes from the spout, splashing into the trough below with a sound that is usually comforting, but today feels profoundly ominous. He catches a measure of it in his glass, then stands upright, turning to face the hushed onlookers. The The glass, held aloft, glitters under the weak afternoon light. The water within is perfectly clear, innocent-looking, a cruel deception. Your throat feels dry, a sudden, inexplicable thirst, even as your stomach recoils. He raises the glass to his lips, his eyes calm and unwavering, meeting the collective gaze of the crowd. He takes a long, deliberate sip. The simple act, so utterly mundane, now feels monumental, loaded with a terrifying significance. You watch his throat work, a visible swallow, then another. He lowers the glass, his expression unchanged, a quiet, resolute victory in his eyes. A profound silence descends, heavier than before. No one speaks, no one moves. Every eye is on him, searching for a tremor, a grimace, any sign of the illness that has decimated this neighborhood. But there is none. Only a calm, steady gaze, a quiet triumph. You look at the faces around you. Disbelief battles with a dawning comprehension. A woman near you, her face pale, slowly lowers the handkerchief she'd been holding to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a fragile, nascent hope. The air itself seems to shift, as if a great, suffocating weight has begun to lift or perhaps to redistribute. The taste of that water, witnessed rather than experienced, takes on a new, chilling meaning. It isn't just about the physical taste anymore, it's the taste of a truth, hard-won and terrifyingly simple. In that single public sip, a profound, undeniable link has been forged, turning an invisible terror into a tangible, fightable enemy. You realize with a shiver that sometimes the most revolutionary act isn't a grand speech or a dramatic discovery, but the simple, courageous act of demonstrating a truth, however bitter, right there for all the world to see and to finally, truly understand. The heavy, metallic clang echoes sharp and resonant through the narrow street. It's the sound of solid iron striking solid iron, a deliberate, forceful impact that makes the pigeons scatter from the rooftops with a sudden, agitated flutter of wings. You feel the tremor of it in your teeth, a deep vibration that seems to shake the very cobblestones beneath your boots. This isn't the rhythmic asterisk thwack asterisk of an undertaker's hammer. This is a sound of defiance, of breaking, of unmaking. You stand amongst a small, grim-faced crowd, their eyes fixed on the broad street pump. The air, though still carrying the city's usual medley of smells, feels charged, expectant, as if witnessing a crucial turning point. Before you, a group of determined men, their faces set, exert a combined force against the pump's heavy mechanism. One wields a massive wrench, its dull metal glinting. Another strains against a lever, his muscles bunching with effort. Their movements are slow, deliberate, each grunt of exertion a testament to the stubborn resistance of the cold iron. With another wrenching heave, there's a deafening metallic shriek, a raw, grinding sound of metal tearing against metal, of a powerful, long-established bond finally giving way. The old, rusty chain, which for decades has linked the pump handle to its life-giving, and now death-giving mechanism, stretches taut, groans, then snaps with a sharp, violent crack that reverberates through the street. The heavy pump handle, suddenly released from its connection, drops with a dull, sickening thud against the iron housing, coming to an abrupt final rest. A profound silence immediately descends, a vacuum where the sounds of struggle and straining metal once were. The pigeons settle back onto the rooftops, their soft cooing a stark counterpoint to the dramatic quiet. The men, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, stand panting, their chests heaving, their eyes fixed on the now inert pump. You look at their faces. There's no triumphant cheer, no celebration, only a deep, weary satisfaction, a profound sense of accomplishment tinged with the lingering sorrow of what the pump has wrought. The crowd, too, remains silent, their expressions a complex blend of relief, dawning comprehension, and a quiet, almost reverent awe. A woman near you slowly brings her hand to her mouth, not to stifle a cough, but as if to hold back a cry, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. This isn't just a broken pump, you realize, it's a profound symbolic act. The very mechanism that delivered death has been violently, irrevocably severed. You feel a strange lightness in your chest, a sense of deep, unexpected catharsis. The grinding sound of that chain breaking, the dull thud of the freed handle, wasn't just a mechanical action. It was the sound of a truth finally, physically asserted, of an invisible enemy being publicly, dramatically disarmed. In that moment, you understand that sometimes to stop a killer, you don't need a grand medical breakthrough or a sweeping new theory. Sometimes, all it takes is the raw courage to identify the source, and the simple, forceful act of breaking the very mechanism that allowed it to flourish, severing the deadly link between an unseen threat and the lives it silently claimed. The night descends, but it's a different kind of darkness now. The air, while still carrying the familiar, underlying tang of the city's damp earth and distant smoke, feels strangely lighter, less oppressive. And then you notice it. The sound that isn't there. The incessant low groan of the dying, the frantic coughs, the distant clatter of the death cart, all gone, replaced by a profound, almost startling quiet that feels deafening in its unexpected arrival. Your ears strain, trying to grasp at any familiar lament, but find only the hushed murmur of the wind through the eaves and the soft, distant scurry of unseen rats. You stand by your window, its grimy pane cool against your fingertips. The gas lamp across the street casts its usual sickly yellow glow, but tonight it seems to illuminate a different world. The street below, usually a stage for shadows of hurried activity and unseen suffering, lies utterly still. No figures scurry, no desperate souls emerge from alleyways. The stillness is unnerving, a heavy blanket that has fallen over the neighborhood, silencing its desperate, week-long scream. A faint light appears in an opposite window, then quickly extinguishes, not out of fear of drawing attention, but perhaps a cautious, tentative acknowledgement of this new, fragile peace. You see a figure, a silhouette against the faint glow, move slowly, deliberately to close their shutters. Their movements are not panicked but weary, almost hopeful. You try to catch their eye, but they remain intent on their task, disappearing behind the heavy wood with a soft, final click. There's no triumphant joy in the air, no burst of celebratory noise, only this deep, almost reverent quiet, as if the entire neighborhood is holding its breath. Your gaze drifts to the Broad Street pump, now standing silent, inert in the center of the road. Its handle, broken and useless, is a stark, almost sculptural testament to the dramatic act that ushered in this quiet. No water drips, no children approach. It's a monument to what was, and to the chilling silence that followed its unmaking. The absence of its gushing water, once a constant hum in the background, is now a defining part of this new, unsettling tranquility. You feel a profound sense of relief, a slow, gentle unclenching in your chest that is almost painful in its unfamiliarity. This isn't the quiet of abandonment, but the exhausted peace after a brutal, unseen war. It's a chilling thought, you realize, that the true measure of suffering is often felt most acutely in its sudden absence. This isn't just a quiet night, it's the profound, vulnerable silence of a neighborhood tentatively daring to hope, to heal, to breathe again, its heart still beating, but now, finally, without the relentless, deafening rhythm of a silent, unseen killer. The air in the Grand Committee room is thick with the scent of old parchment, polished mahogany, and a faint, lingering trace of lamp oil, an atmosphere of stagnant authority, utterly untouched by the putrid breath of the city outside. Your boots, accustomed to the grimy cobblestones, feel strangely heavy on the thick, patterned rug. Before you, seated around a vast, gleaming table, are the city's most influential figures, the Board of Health. Their faces, uniformly solemn, are turned towards a speaker, perhaps the very man who bravely drank from the Broad Street pump, as he lays out his meticulous evidence. He speaks with a quiet, unwavering conviction, his voice cutting through the hushed tension of the room. He gestures to the detailed map, adorned with its grim constellation of red pins, each one a life extinguished. He explains the clustering, the undeniable pattern, the stark correlation between the deaths and the contaminated water source. Your own heart pounds with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The truth, you feel, is finally being laid bare. You recall the bitter taste of the Thames, the sickening stench of the cesspools, the profound silence after the pump handle broke. All of it points to this moment. But as he speaks, a subtle, disquieting shift occurs among the esteemed members of the board. A stout gentleman, his waistcoat stretched tight, crosses his arms, a faint, almost imperceptible sneer playing on his lips. His eyes, fixed on some distant point beyond the speaker's head, betray a profound, almost willful disinterest. Another member, a gaunt man with a neatly trimmed beard, idly taps a pen against his teeth, his gaze drifting towards the ornate ceiling, as if seeking wisdom there rather than in the raw, uncomfortable facts being presented. Hushed murmurs ripple through a small group to your left, phrases like mere coincidence and miasmic vapors float through the air, their tones dismissive, condescending. Their polished faces remain impassive, but their body language, the slight turns of their heads, the almost imperceptible tightening of their jaws, speak volumes of an ingrained resistance. The speaker concludes, his voice trailing off into a profound, heavy silence. The weight of his evidence, so clear, so undeniable, hangs in the air, waiting for acknowledgement, for acceptance. You lean forward, your hands gripping the back of the chair in front of you, your knuckles white, a desperate, unspoken plea for them to truly see. But then, the chairman, a formidable figure at the head of the table, clears his throat. He picks up a heavy, polished wooden gavel, its surface gleaming under the gaslight. He doesn't speak. He doesn't offer a rebuttal. He simply raises the gavel slowly, deliberately. Then, with a heavy, resounding asterisk thwack asterisk, he brings it down upon the table. The sound, sharp and final, echoes through the room, a jarring, brutal punctuation mark that shatters the fragile hope that had begun to bloom. It's not a call to order, it's a dismissal, a definitive, unyielding statement. The impact reverberates, a physical jolt that seems to settle deep in your bones, signifying not just the end of the discussion, but the outright rejection of an inconvenient truth. The scent of old wood, once comforting, now feels oppressive, stifling. You feel a profound, aching frustration, a bitter taste in your mouth that mimics the despair of the city's unseen suffering. It's a chilling realization. The most dangerous obstacles aren't always ignorance or apathy, but the entrenched, almost arrogant certainty of those in power, who, shielded by their theories and their positions, can so easily and definitively silence the uncomfortable, life-saving truth. The heavy slam of that gavel, you understand, is the sound of reason itself being forcibly shut down, leaving a vital, hard-won truth to languish, unheard in the face of persistent, deadly delusion. The air in the marketplace, though still dense with the usual medley of unwashed bodies and discarded offal, buzzes with a new, different kind of energy. It's a lower hum, a pervasive current of hushed whispers and exchanged glances, far removed from the boisterous clamour of days past. Your boots navigate the muddy ground, but your attention is drawn to the faces of the street sellers, the shoppers, even the idle loiterers. There's a noticeable shift in their eyes. No longer just haunted by dread, but now alight with a flicker of something new, a cautious understanding, a shared revelation. You hear snippets as you pass. The pump, they say, the water. Old Thomas told me they broke the handle clean off. The words are passed from mouth to mouth, carried on the damp air, gaining momentum with each retelling. It's not the official pronouncements from the Board of Health. This is the raw, urgent gossip of the streets, the vital, visceral communication of a city that has learned to trust its own instincts, its own grim experiences, over the detached pronouncements of gentlemen in their grand halls. A fishmonger, his hands still slick with scales, nods knowingly to a customer, his eyes wide as he leans in close, imparting some fresh, unsettling detail, a secret now shouted from the rooftops. You observe a small group gathered around a public notice board, not reading official decrees but a hastily scrawled chalk drawing of the Broad Street pump, now depicted with a broken handle, a stark, almost defiant X scored across it. A woman points to it, her finger trembling slightly, her expression a mixture of profound relief and a lingering, visceral anger. Her neighbor, a stout man, simply nods, his gaze fixed on the image, a silent, grim acknowledgement of the countless lives lost to what now feels like an obvious, infuriating truth. The image itself, crude and powerful, feels more potent than any printed word. The air thickens with this burgeoning collective consciousness. It's an understanding forged not in scientific papers, but in the crucible of shared suffering, whispered from sickroom to sickroom, from bereaved neighbor to neighbor. The official pronouncements about miasma and bad air, once accepted as gospel, now seem to float, thin and ephemeral, above the solid, undeniable truth that has gripped the common man. They talk of the tainted water, of the cursed pump, their language imbued with the power of folk wisdom, of a truth that has become an indelible part of their shared lived experience, a new legend born from the depths of tragedy. You feel the ground beneath your feet, no longer just cobbled stone, but the very foundation of a city's perception, slowly, inexorably shifting. This isn't a victory declared from on high. It's a truth rising from the very mud and grime of the streets, a quiet revolution of understanding that defies all official dismissals. And you realize with a profound sense of awe that sometimes the most powerful truths aren't discovered in laboratories or debated in elegant drawing rooms, but are forged in the collective anguish of a populace, taking root in the shared consciousness, transforming from evidence into legend, utterly undeniable and utterly unstoppable, regardless of how many gavels are slammed. The air, for the first time in what feels like an age, smells profoundly different. Gone is the cloying, sickly sweet stench of decay, the metallic tang of illness. Instead, a sharp, clean, almost painful astringent scent assaults your nostrils. The unmistakable, potent aroma of fresh lime. It's everywhere, clinging to the damp stones, burning the back of your throat with its sheer intensity. You cough, a dry, involuntary hack, but it's a cough of surprise, not sickness. It's the smell of a city desperately trying to cleanse itself, to scrub away the lingering ghost of the plague. You step onto the cobblestones, and they're no longer merely grey and grimy. A startling, almost unnatural white film coats the surfaces, the fresh lime wash. It's sloshed across pavements, dribbled down walls, and pooled in the gutters, its brilliant whiteness a stark, almost blinding contrast to the dark, ancient grime that still stubbornly shows through in places. Workmen, their faces streaked with white dust, move with a determined, tireless energy, sloshing buckets of the milky liquid, their brooms sweeping it across the ground in rhythmic, scrubbing motions. Their movements are resolute, almost ritualistic, a physical manifestation of a city trying to purge its recent horrifying past. You pass a doorway and a faint, acrid mist hangs in the air, rising from a recently lime-washed facade. You watch as a woman, her head wrapped in a scarf, gingerly steps out, her eyes narrowed against the pungent fumes. She carefully avoids stepping in a puddle of the milky wash, her movements hesitant, almost fearful, as if the very act of cleansing carries its own new kind of threat. There's no joy in her expression, only a quiet, weary resignation, a profound understanding that while the lime might purify the surfaces, it cannot erase the deeper scars left by the plague. The lime itself, so sharp and aggressive, feels like a forced, almost violent act of sanitization. It burns your eyes, makes your skin prickle, but it's a discomfort welcomed after weeks of the alternative. The entire street, once a landscape of hidden horrors, is now exposed in this stark, unforgiving white stripped bare, its ugliness no longer masked by shadows or pervasive stench. Every crack, every stain, every imperfection is highlighted, revealed by the aggressive cleansing, leaving a raw, almost wounded appearance. You feel a profound, chilling sense of paradox. This powerful, purifying scent, this brilliant, aggressive whiteness, isn't about renewal. It's about covering, about attempting to erase, about a desperate effort to forget. The lime doesn't simply clean. It scars, leaving a raw chemical burn on the very face of the city. You realize that a city, like a person, carries its wounds. And while you can scrub away the physical traces of illness, the memory, the fear, the deeper emotional scars, they linger, etched into the very fabric of its existence, beneath the fresh, astringent layers of lime. This is the bitter, almost painful scent of a wound attempting to heal, not gracefully, but with a desperate, burning urgency. You return to Broad Street, to the familiar spot where the pump once stood, a silent sentinel of sickness. The air here, though still carrying the sharp scent of lime from the recent cleansing efforts, has an underlying stillness, an almost unnatural quiet that permeates the very cobblestones. The iron pump itself is gone, ripped out, leaving a raw, gaping hole in the ground, now covered by a temporary, crudely nailed wooden board. It's a physical void where a vital landmark once stood. You walk towards the empty space, your boots making a faint, hollow sound on the uneven ground. The wooden cover, splintered and stained, feels cold and dead beneath your fingers as you reach out to touch it. There's a faint, earthy smell rising from the hole it covers, a deep, unsettling aroma of wet soil and something ancient, something that feels buried and disturbed. It's a smell that hints at secrets, at a history now irrevocably tied to this barren spot. The absence of the pump's familiar silhouette creates a stark, almost disorienting void in the streetscape. You watch the few people who pass by. They give the spot a wide berth, their steps quickening, their gazes fixed firmly ahead. No one lingers, no one openly points or whispers, but you notice the subtle shifts in their expressions, a tightening of the jaw, a nervous tremor, a quick, almost involuntary glance towards the empty space, before their eyes snap away, as if looking directly at it would invite a fresh wave of terror. A young mother, her hand clutching her child, pulls him closer as they hurry past, her eyes wide and haunted, her mouth set in a grim, tight line. Her fear, though silent, feels palpable, a palpable ghost lingering in the air. The silence around the spot is profound. It's not just the absence of the pump's gushing water, but a deep, emotional quiet, a collective breath held, a trauma still echoing in the very fabric of the street. Even the distant chatter from other parts of the market seems to die away here, swallowed by the weight of unspoken memories. The sunlight, when it finally breaks through the clouds, falls on the raw, splintered wood, highlighting its starkness, making it look less like a temporary cover and more like a tombstone marking a mass grave. You realize with a chilling clarity that the water, though gone, has left an indelible mark, a phantom presence in the memory of this neighborhood. This empty space isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a gaping wound in the community's psyche, a stark, visceral reminder of the invisible killer that flowed so freely, so deceptively from its depths. The ghost in the water, you understand, may have been banished, but its memory, its lingering trauma, still haunts the communal well, etched forever into the very heart of Broad Street, a silent testament to how deeply the actions of the past can scar the present, even when the physical threat is gone. The air here is thick, not with the old, familiar putridity, but with a new, raw scent, damp earth, freshly dug clay, and the acrid tang of coal smoke from a dozen small fires. Your boots sink slightly into the churned mud of a vast excavation site, a gaping wound in the very belly of London. But it's the sound that truly engulfs you. A deep, persistent rumble vibrates through the ground, rising to a cacophony of rhythmic asterisk clang-clang-clang of metal on stone, the sharp crack of picks hitting bedrock, and the guttural shouts of men coordinating their efforts. This isn't the panicked cry of a watchman, this is the roar of an army at work, a colossal, relentless symphony of purposeful labor that promises an end to the city's unseen suffering. You move closer, drawn by the immense scale of the undertaking, the sheer audacity of it. Gas lamps strung on rough wooden poles cast pools of orange light into the deep trenches, illuminating the sweating, dust-caked figures toiling below. Their movements are powerful, a coordinated dance of muscle and grit against the unrelenting earth. You see men swinging heavy pickaxes, their bodies arcing with each blow, sending sprays of dirt and rock flying high into the night air. Others wrestle massive, newly fired brick sections into precise alignment, their grunts of effort punctuating the rhythmic thuds as they lay the foundations for a new, hidden world. The sheer physical force required, the relentless human endeavor, is breathtaking, a monumental defiance of the city's grim past. A foreman, his face a mask of grime and determination, shouts instructions into the murky depths, his voice strained but unwavering amidst the din. His gaze, though tired, holds a fierce, almost defiant resolve as he surveys the sprawling underground project. He pauses, wiping his brow with the back of a calloused hand, and for a brief moment his eyes meet yours. There's no hostility, no questioning, only a shared, silent understanding of the immense, urgent purpose behind this sprawling subterranean construction. It's a tacit acknowledgement that this monumental effort is directly tied to the recent, horrifying past, a desperate pledge to prevent such devastation ever again. The ground beneath your feet trembles almost continuously, a low, visceral thrum that speaks of deep earth being moved, of an entire new world being carved beneath the old. The raw smell of wet earth and raw sewage, though somewhat muted by the scale of the construction, is still present, a grim reminder of the very problem they are attempting to bury and redirect into a controlled, distant flow. You observe the endless line of horse-drawn carts, laden with excavated earth and spoil, moving slowly away from the site, their wheels groaning under the heavy load, a constant flow of removal that never seems to cease. You realize with a sense of profound awe that this isn't merely infrastructure, this is a defiant act of collective will, a monumental, unseen revolution being carved out of the very earth, not for glory, but for survival. The roar of these colossal works, this tireless, relentless effort to control the invisible, insidious currents beneath the city, is a testament to humanity's capacity to learn, to adapt, to wage war against even the most elusive of enemies, not with grand theories alone, but with raw physical labor. It's the powerful sound of a city finally fighting back, not with prayers or poultices, but with pickaxes and sheer, unyielding determination, burying its past evils to forge a cleaner, healthier future, one brick, one shovel, one vibration at a time. The ground beneath you pulsates with a new, hopeful heartbeat. You reach for the tap, its cool metal familiar under your fingers. A simple twist and the water flows not in a hesitant trickle, but a steady, silent stream. It splashes gently into the waiting glass, creating a soft, almost hypnotic gurgle, a comforting sound utterly devoid of the sinister echoes of a public pump. The glass fills and you hold it up to the light, observing its clarity. It's perfectly transparent, utterly devoid of any hint of milkiness, no floating debris, no unsettling sheen. There's no smell, none of that cloying decay, no acrid tang of industry, just the clean, fresh scent of nothing. You bring the cool glass to your lips. The first contact is smooth, refreshing, a pure sensation that calms something deep within you. You drink a long, unhurried draught. It's completely tasteless, a remarkable absence of flavor that speaks volumes. No metallic bite, no earthy grit, no sickly sweet promise of decay. It simply quenches, clean and pure, leaving your mouth feeling fresh, revitalized. This isn't the fraught gamble of a communal ladle or the grim taste of a polluted river. This is effortless, unquestioning sustenance. You place the glass back down, a soft click against the countertop. The silence that follows is profound, punctuated only by the distant, familiar hum of your modern world. It's a silence that allows a deeper thought to settle. This very act, this simple, thoughtless access to clean, safe water, is a direct, invisible inheritance. It's the quiet, enduring legacy of those who fought in the stench and confusion of a forgotten plague, the heroes who charted the invisible, broke the pump, and dreamed of a future where a glass of water wasn't a death sentence, but a simple, life-giving right. We drink their triumph, their tireless effort in every clean sip, often without ever knowing the bitter price paid for such mundane clarity. It is a daily miracle taken for granted.